Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the only Yacht Rock themed political gab fest available in North America, to our knowledge. Thank you for being part of Two Way. That was a joke. We haven't yet selected a theme, although Sean is lobbying heavily. And here is Sean with a stunt intended to win the day. 114, please. If you think that 8-second clip has locked in the Yacht Rock radio version of our theme song, you would be wrong. It's a very strong gambit by Sean Spicer, but not decisive.
Very expensive stunt. It was
not decisive. Anyway,
Two-way budget's gone up this year. Huh?
We're getting a hip hop. We're getting a hip hop version. That's all I have to say. We're getting a hip hop version.
Really?
Not available yet, but we're getting a hip hop version.
Like Beastie Boys type of thing.
I'm not saying. Anyway, thank you for joining. This is the morning meeting. We run through the day's events modeled on the network television news division's morning meetings. After we do that, Dan and Sean will talk about it with a level of expertise more like Brooks and Shields and Yarnell. And then, and only then, will we take your questions, but we will do it happily with the presumption of grace for all. And we never put smack in the chat, and neither should you. There are a lot of important stories today and a lot of weird stories. And we'll talk about them both. First, as always, let's run through what I like to call the president's schedule. And that starts with or the day's schedule. It's not just the president. And that starts with these two presidential events. Noon signs executive orders, and then 4 p.m. makes remarks. Now, we believe that one of these events, at least one of these events, relates to something that's been floating around as a possibility for a while, and according to Bloomberg, is happening, which is the president is signing an executive order related to 401ks. Here's how Bloomberg has framed this event. Very important to people in the industry. Trump to sign order easing path for private assets in 401ks. Here's a bit of their write-up. Trump will sign an executive order today that aims to allow private equity, real estate, cryptocurrency, and other alternative assets in 401ks, a major victory for industries looking to tap some of the roughly 12.5 trillion, that's trillion with a T, held in those retirement accounts. So again, not clear to us. There's more details of it in the Bloomberg piece. Not clear to us if that's happening at the earlier event or the later event, but we think that's happening today. And perhaps during this hour, one of our sources will get back to us to clarify exactly what the president's up to. Again,
when I saw
noon is closed press and 4 is open. So in the East Room, so it's possible he's signing it behind closed doors at noon and then talking about it at 4. Sean, go ahead.
Do we think that's really close press?
It's like, I'll take that. What's the over-under on that one? So you know what? When I saw that story this morning, I had this epiphany, which was if you had told me 10 years ago that a 79-year-old Republican would be leading the way on crypto and AI, although I wouldn't have known what either one of those were 10 years ago, I would say that's impossible. There's no way the Democrats will have seized both of those issues. And the idea that the Republican Party, led by a 79-year-old Republican, is leading the charge in both of these critical future areas for politics is actually a huge underreported story. Like, this is not what I would have ever assumed my party would be leading the way on.
You left out marijuana legalization too.
Well, we're not getting. That's not going to happen. That will not happen.
Oh, it will.
That one.
Not happen this calendar
not
year.
Under this.
Oh, it will.
Not under this president. No.
It will.
He will not do that. No.
It will. All
right, cue the tape, everybody.
In any event, that is one big thing they're doing, and another big thing they're talking about doing is privatizing Fannie and Freddie.
Yeah,
the president's been meeting with bank presidents on that too, or CEOs. So watch this space. They're doing some big things in the economy that they think they can do, maybe without congressional action, although they'll need congressional action on Fannie and Freddie.
If I can make one more quick point. We talked about this. You brought up the point.
Make it quick because I got to go through the schedule.
I am, but I'm just saying it's fascinating. We talked about this with Gaza, and you comment to one of the community members the other day was that most reporters probably don't get Gaza, and that's why they don't write as much. I think that's definitely true. But in both of these areas, both in the crypto and the AI area, I think they're very similar. We don't see much depth in the reporting because they just don't get it.
Yeah, And they certainly don't get the political implications. And while there are people around the president like David Sachs and others who understand and understand not just the substance, but the contrast with the Biden administration, whose posture towards these things were stop, this is negative, this is dangerous. It also is a huge way to lock in these sectors as financial supporters. And 2026 and probably 2028 is going to see an enormous advantage for Republicans in raising money from these sectors. Enormous.
And every candidate that I've talked to, at least in the last 2 months, has said what they've brought up proactively an effort to reach out to people in the crypto industry.
And the amounts of money involved are massive. They dwarf, I don't want to say they dwarf labor unions with compulsory dues sent for political activity. And I won't say they dwarf Hollywood or Silicon Valley, whatever, but they're massive.
Yes, they do.
Massive. Well, they will this cycle. I'm just saying historically, it's not the biggest pile of money ever, but it's a massive.
Well, there's so much fast money being made that the number of $10 million checks dwarfs everybody else.
100%. And again, you think about the three pots of money: small dollar donors, bundling, and super PACs. Republicans have a massive advantage in super PACs. The other two, a little bit more up in the air. We shall see. All right, the vice president is in Indiana today. I don't know what he did for dinner last night. We'll talk about that in a moment. But
a lot of good steakhouses there.
He's doing another Republican fundraiser, and he's also meeting with the Republican governor there and legislative leaders to talk about redistricting. Scott Bessent was on Morning Joe. We'll show you some of that. He speaks tonight to the Young America's Foundation's 47th annual National Conservative Student Conference. House and Senate still out, and still a bunch of high-level delegations there. All right, Russia. Witkoff had his 3-hour meeting. The president said, and Secretary Rubio suggested there'll be a summit. The Russians basically saying, we know where the summit's going to be, and it's likely going to be next week. I'm still a little bit skeptical. Here is the headline from the Associated Press, 103. Trump to meet Putin soon, the Kremlin says, as the White House deadline looms on Ukraine. Of course, that deadline's tomorrow, and the president, despite saying he'll meet with Putin and then maybe Zelensky, also is going forward with the sanctions on India for buying energy from Russia. Some European countries are concerned. Some feel they weren't included enough yesterday in all of this. And of course, we know the president likes one-on-one. Here is, I'll have what he's not having, Mike Pompeo, slim down, don't be distracted by how skinny he is, talking about a topic that he's long been involved in, which is Russia, this morning. 104, please.
Looks like some progress was made yesterday, according to the president, when Mr. Witkoff met Putin. President Trump thinks that at least lays the groundwork for the opportunity to meet next week. But we should make no mistake about it. The days ahead will be interesting because the new tariffs come into place, tariffs on those who are purchasing Russian oil, the very thing that's continued to fuel and fund Vladimir Putin's terror campaign against the Ukrainian civilians in Kyiv and all around that country. And second, we'll see if he continues to launch missiles there in the days that are ahead in the preparation for the meeting, and if it really comes off, if there really is a basis, which President Trump said is a condition. Look, I'm confident President Trump will continue to ratchet up the pressure. He can clearly see, and we can all clearly see, he has grown frustrated that Putin has not been prepared to commit to a ceasefire, as President Zelensky has consistently done. And then we shouldn't forget, President Trump said he'd not only meet with Putin, he'd meet with Zelensky. He informed our European partners. So I think we are starting down a path where Putin realizes that this has to end, and it has to end quickly.
So pretty bullish for a guy who historically has not been very bullish on the Russian bear. See what I did there? Sean, let's start basic. When, where, and what? When will this occur? Where will it occur? And what will be on the agenda, assuming the two leaders actually meet?
I think it has to be. I mean, so there's a couple things. I'd say 7 days, but a trip of that nature takes not just some logistics, but some massive security. So Secret Service can do a lot really quick, but just understand that that there's only so much you can do in a short period of time. So I would guess 7 to 10 days.
We know the service can change water flows. Sorry, go ahead.
That's different. It's a lake.
Yeah.
And they can't. They can order it. That's very different.
So today's Thursday.
7 days.
Today's
I would
Thursday.
say,
Do you think it'll be next week?
I do.
Okay.
I think I would look at late next, like maybe by the week, maybe the weekend. So I'll give myself 10 days and throw in the full weekend. So by Sunday, Monday of the following week, I would look at something like Geneva, where you've got some infrastructure there in terms of other diplomatic reach back capabilities. But I also think, like, it'll depend. There's a couple things that are going to, like, Witkoff's take on all this stuff, what he really thought Putin was willing to give him, and the advice that Trump's going to get from Secretary Rubio in particular, to me, is going to matter. Because to do all this, Trump is going to realize that if I do this and walk out of fill in the blank place and don't come back with something, it's going to look epically bad. I mean, like, and there's no other way to read that. I mean, just to be blunt.
What's within the realm of the possible, what's the best case deliverable from that meeting if it occurs?
The best case deliverable is that Putin agreed to certain areas that we will say he now controls. There will be no further advances, no further fighting, no bombs. He carves out areas that are largely within Russian control or have a history of Russian occupation. But that's it. And no more destruction, no more killing, no more firing. And so a full-on ceasefire. That would be the best case scenario.
Realistic.
I think that's the key word, realistic. Yeah. Because I know there are some people that are going to say we're rewarding them. I'm on that team, but I also go, okay, tell me another scenario where this ends.
Yeah. Dan, start with when, where, and what.
I'll say next Wednesday or Thursday, Iceland or Greenland. And I think I agree with Sean. That would be the best case scenario. I think a more realistic is to announce a 1 month ceasefire to continue conversations. And it takes you closer to the winter season when fighting tends to slow down anyway. Right. And you try to get a deal.
Okay. A percent chance the meeting happens, Sean.
Well, I agree with Sean, though, because this goes to that point. If he goes and they do not have a ceasefire at the end of the war, it's emasculating.
Yeah, but percent chance the meeting happens at all, Sean.
60.
60, Dan.
30.
Yeah, I'm with Dan. I mean, to go into this meeting without the thing being somewhat pre-cooked is just too big a risk. And I know President Trump has great confidence in his ability to get in a room, but this is not a guy you get in the room with without a plan. So,
and would anyone trust Putin?
No, I don't know how you could.
I asked Keith Kellogg that yesterday on my show. Putin's gonna say whatever he has to say. Yeah. So you have to have some.
But does the India thing give the president leverage in a meaningful way in Putin's mind?
I think. Look, I covered this yesterday on my show with Kellogg. The word that I've been getting now for the last 7 days is. And Kellogg brought this up, that Bassett has been saying this, that like our enforcement of secondary trade, so foreign flag vessels carrying Russian oil in particular, has been at a 3. The president has been making it clear to internal allies that he's willing to ratchet that up to an 8 or a 9. Yeah. That's really what's going to hit Russia. And I think that getting that word to Russia, that there's been a wink nod through the 4 years of Biden where we targeted you, but then you foreign flagged ships to get rid of your oil. They are going to ratchet that up. It was getting taken very seriously. The State Department was working up a whole series. And I think that word started to get out, maybe intentionally, maybe not. But the bottom line is I think Putin has started to realize, like, the runway has come to an end. And and Trump's willing to do some real things that will have a real impact on my economy.
One word, China.
Nope. Yeah. Dan, I'm with you. I'm very skeptical of this whole thing, but let's see. So I can't remember where I read it this morning. I thought it was the New York Times, but I went back and I couldn't find it. There was a paragraph about all the criticisms of Witkoff. And remember, there was a New York Post hit job on Witkoff that rounded these things up a few weeks ago, saying he's not prepared, he's inexperienced, he goes in and uses a Russian translator who's not a U.S. employee. And Witkoff is obviously at the center of this. Rubio's involved, others are involved, but Witkoff is writing this. Dan, if you were an advisor to President Trump or a friend, is he risking too much by being so reliant on a very inexperienced guy here?
Well, no, in that he trusts Witkoff. He has a relationship with Witkoff. They know each other, in and out. And so anybody who's representing you, you would hope would understand how you think, what's a deal breaker, what might tempt you or incentivize you. So yes, he doesn't have kind of diplomatic graces, let's say, but if he has the president's ear and he understands the president and he knows what the president wants, then you know then he should be effective.
This has been the biggest contrast between this term and the first term is the point that Dan brought up is having people that you trust that have the president's confidence, that have his ear, and vice versa. We had too many people in the first term who weren't there for their own, were actually there for their own purposes to blunt, in many cases, the president's objectives. And he wants people he can trust. And in Witkoff, he's got that person, which if the way things are going, the next question should be, when does he get named Fed chairman?
All right. Tariffs. In theory, the tariffs went into effect. I find the whole thing to be just silly because he could take them all off, whichever one's off. He could ratchet them up. So I don't get why people are making that big a deal of the deadline. Here's 105, please. And markets, I think have priced all this into the stock, literally. Trump's tariff gamble puts America's ties with India at risk as the president pursues his goal in Russia and trade. America's relationship with an important partner in Asia could end up as collateral damage. They're tariffs on a bunch of countries. The India ones are obviously special and distinctive. Here is Scott Bessent in a very long appearance on Morning Joe this morning talking about the tariffs. 107, please.
One of the big surprises for me over the past 100, almost 200 days now has been that it's this regulatory state that we've created that's pushed a lot of the manufacturing offshore. So a big part of President Trump's agenda is also deregulation.
All right, and here's Larry Kudlow on Fox and Friends on the same topic, 115.
Just to, we're 30 seconds here. All the gloom and doom, tariff inflation, tariff recession, tariff catastrophe, none of that has happened, okay? And in fact, as you noted earlier, the tariff revenues are pouring in, okay? He could do as much as $400 billion this year alone in tariff revenues. Imports from China, or let's say Chinese exports to the United States, are at their lowest point in over 20 years. Our trade deficit through June is at its lowest point in the last 2 years, okay? These are all positives. And basically what he's saying is he wants a level playing field, and he wants to protect the American economy. People have been taking advantage of the United States, and that's coming to an end. Now, instead of warfare, instead of retaliation or the so-called world tariff war, no, it's deal-making everywhere.
So Larry is one of many MAGA free traders who's found religion on tariffs now. Dan, besides looking to see if prices rise for American consumers, where are you looking in the wake of yesterday's deadline?
Well, by the way, I just want to say, to see Larry Kudlow talk about the virtue of tariffs is just a remarkable turn over the last 20 years. I am looking for the exemptions on tariffs because Trump made the announcement yesterday about I think it was 100%, 200% tariff on chips, advanced microchips that are largely for AI. And then he announced exemptions that if you build some of the parts here in the United States, you're exempt. So the market, I just looked, futures are up 250 points because of all the exemptions, which is very reminiscent of term one. So, I think we'll see. Trump has been smart about, and Scott Bessent and the team, about when things look like they're tipping in a wrong direction, they dial stuff down. They have exemptions. And so, as long as they're able to try to keep that balance and get some sort of set of deals, again, I go back to, we still haven't seen a single deal consummated. There's term sheets, there's aspirations, but there's no deal yet. So I think they'll continue to try to strike this balance. And again, I'll say this, it's putting Democrats in a pickle because Democrats have not come out and said these are bad, like trying to do these deals. They are just kind of nipping on his ankles. But I think you're going to start hearing Republicans say, oh, are you against what Trump is trying to do? And I think they'll sit there and change the subject.
100%. By the way, just to correct your language, we don't say the word exemptions anymore. It is product coverage flexibility. That is the.
What's the
You'll hear-
acronym for that? Product? Yeah. Okay.
PCF. Yeah.
Yeah,
Or
okay.
rebates. We discussed rebates. That those are the new internal. The word exemption is a no. It's product coverage flexibility. But to your point,
Rolls off the tongue.
These annexes that are coming out are going to be critical, and the EU should be the first one where we talk about de minimis products, 0 for 0 tariff rates on like products, supply chains issues. I mean, there's a lot that's going to make a difference in this. But all that being said, 2 points. One, the revenue to the federal government cannot be overstated. It is unbelievable what's coming in. And to your point, Dan, we saw this with Biden and some of these China tariffs when he came in. If you're a Democrat in some point in the future, because I guarantee you, whether it's the 10% or the 15% floor that we're seeing pretty consistently now, I don't think that go ahead, you take that out. Who's going to be the person that says no mas?
Yep. Unless there's real inflation again, I agree with you. Yep.
Oh, and by the way, you saw the Bank of England cut rates.
Because their economy's struggling.
Right. I'm just going to be another talking point that Trump's going to bring up. These other countries are doing what's necessary to stay competitive, and why aren't we?
All right. Anything else on tariffs either of you want to say?
No, I mean, look, I think, Mark, you've said it in your newsletter this morning. We've talked about it. I am very curious about the back to school stuff here. If you start to see people complaining about some goods, basic essentials that start rising, I think there's nothing like real people starting to speak up, not Democrats, not Republicans, but just everyday people saying, my goodness, these things are hurting. Dan,
would you recommend my newsletter to others?
I would strongly recommend it.
All right, just making sure. Thank you for that. All right, Epstein. Last night, or yesterday morning, rather, we talked here about CNN reporting that the vice president was going to host a very big group of august law enforcement officials for a conversation about strategy related to the Epstein matter. And the vice president's office issued what Mark Caputo and I broke down on Two-Way Tonight last night, somewhat of a non-denial denial, but as best I can tell, that dinner did not occur. Dan, was the dinner on and then off, or was never on?
I think it was on and then it was off.
Okay. Sean, that's what most people I know think, including some people close to the White House. It seems weird that if they wanted to have a meeting, that they would let the fact that somebody leaked it kill the meeting unless somebody was angry about it being released to such an extent. You know what I'm saying? Like, what do you think happened here?
It was a pretty embarrassing thing, though. I mean, that for on a lot of levels was pretty humiliating.
I don't know why humiliating.
Because you've completely lost control of this. You're tripping over yourself. The FBI director is meeting with the chief of staff and the vice president to talk strategy. I mean, the whole thing, pick your level, was bonkers.
So I can see several things happening. One is it was floated as an idea. Hey, what if we all got together my place after work and talked about this? And it was never concrete. I mean, because I've seen enough of these things happen where it was never fully baked in the first place. I think that's very possible. But I also think that this, and I brought this up when we first discussed it, when you start looking at to where it went, i.e. CNN, who was mentioned, who did it? I mean, part of this was it an attempt to blow it up? And also not just that, blow up the meeting, but also to get the president pissed. And because this is the kind of story that he sees, I speak from experience on this, and says, the hell is this? Why are you guys doing this? Who leaked it? I mean, blow it up by making sure he sees it. So I can see that being a very strong possibility to begin with as well, that you somebody rolled the grenade in there with the intent of blowing that thing up.
Yeah, I'll just say whatever the status of that meeting, and maybe they'll just do a Zoom, what their strategy is to deal with what is likely in September to be this, and maybe even in August, this returning in full force. The mood of the House from every person associated with Republicans in the House I talked to, the mood is there needs to be more. And they're not hearing from the White House, in some cases at least, about what the White House's plan is to get them off the hook with their constituents. But those who say that this is just a content-driven thing by MAGA influencers who want something to talk about. There's grassroots interest in this, and the Democrats are not going to lay it down. So, to the extent they haven't, to the extent there was going to be a meeting to develop a strategy, and to the extent they haven't yet developed a strategy, my sense is they need to develop a strategy because it's not going away organically. All right, redistricting. Politico has a column this morning by Jonathan Martin, 110, that says moderate House Republicans in the Northeast and in California are very upset about these redistricting efforts because they'll lose their jobs over them if the blue states follow through to match Texas. I understand they don't want to lose their particular jobs, but of course, the whole point of this is to pick up other seats. So, it's not like Republicans are just for a net loss. Go ahead.
Politico should write a story tomorrow saying that the sun came up.
Yeah.
I mean, this was sort of like I honestly kept thinking to myself, could you state the obvious in more words, please?
Yeah. Texas is ratcheting up the pressure on the Democrats. They still are showing no signs of going back. But I see no other big developments in the story in the last 24 hours, but it is still getting a lot of coverage. So, Dan, anything you see on your radar on redistricting you want to bring up?
I think the only thing is that the Democrats are getting a little out of control in how they talk about this. I mean, we went back and forth yesterday, and you guys were alluding to it. But the fact that some people are starting to say this is like a threat to democracy and stuff like it's an eye roll. I mean, it is as old as the Republic itself. And I think the party's just got to be careful. And you're starting to see, Mark, you flag this, and I think, Sean, you have too. It's a real open question if Gavin Newsom can pull this off. Same with even J.B. Pritzker. So, we'll see. But I think the party, look, it's going to hurt. Like it is decreasing our chances of taking the House back.
Well, the other thing is, I think it'll be, first of all, I think the big question to me is what's the net, right? When this is all done, when the dust settles, because the bottom line is, politically speaking, Republicans have a much better hand to play. If they can force Democrats back, like let's say hypothetically they pick 5 out of Texas, you theoretically could get 1 out of New Hampshire. I think you could get 3 out of Ohio, 1 or 2 out of Indiana, 1 or 2 out of Missouri. So to me, this is all about the net. What do you get out of it? And the thing about every one of the Republican states, every one of them, is it's a simple act of the legislature. In the Democratic states, Illinois, I think, has a problem. New York definitely has a constitutional issue. California has an issue in terms of logistically how they actually get there. And this is where, Republicans, I think the bigger issue to me is, what does the net look like and how many people are willing to do it? Because there's not a single state outside of Texas. And I'm still not convinced that Texas really wants to do this, or are they going through the motions? But the bottom line is that in New Hampshire, Ohio, Missouri, Indiana, they're not jumping up and down and saying, let's go for it. Right. They're all like,
Nobody is.
Yeah. Well, let me say a few things, then we'll move to our last topic, and please raise your hand if you want in on the conversation. First of all, I agree, John, with what you said, with the exception that Matthew Bartlett and I think you're wrong about New Hampshire. I don't think there's any way they're going to get a seat out of New Hampshire.
No. I just to be clear, I didn't say they could. It's if
I don't think it's possible.
You don't think you can carve the first into a winning district?
No.
Oh,
I don't think you can.
I know. Okay. Okay. I mean, again, I think there's a big difference between whether they will and whether they could. You could easily make the first more competitive.
I just don't think the governor is going to go for it. I mean, you could.
No. Okay, then we're saying the same thing.
Does, Ohio does, Missouri
does,
Indiana.
Yes. If they tried to do it, they could do it. But Matthew Bartlett, I just don't think they will. Yeah. So
wait, hold on. We're in agreement. We're actually in agreement. Then I think you could do it.
Yeah.
They won't do it.
Yeah, but that's why I wouldn't even bring it up in the same breath with the other states. In any event, it's a quibble. Just to be clear for people, you wouldn't know this from most of the coverage. Literally, as Sean suggested, this may happen in no state.
Yep.
They literally happen in no state. And the net's what matters. And to me, the danger for the Democrats is the most likely outcome is Republicans net some seats. And it's possible that not a single Democratic state pulls this off, in which case they will have wasted a lot of time not talking about the economy, not talking about even Epstein. They're talking about this. And they will have promised their voters that they know how to fight and they're going to stand up to Donald Trump, and they completely fail. And then they lose the House over it, when people will say, well, you couldn't execute this and you should have been focused on other ways to try to take the majority back. So I really do think there's a lot of peril here for Democrats because, again, focus on the trees, not the forest. Republicans have the advantage in netting more seats in almost every way, just because the process in each individual state.
The only thing, Mark, is I am very critical of the Democratic Party's fight stuff. But on this, I actually do get it. They may fail, and I agree with you, but they are smart to say, okay, if the White House is hunting for seats to keep the majority, which they have a right to do, not unethical or illegal or whatever, then so should we. I get. And to your point, Republicans have a stronger hand to play than us, but that they shouldn't focus on it, to me, would not be the right strategy.
The thing that I'll say, though, and again, two key things, whether it's Indiana, Missouri, New Hampshire, Ohio, or even Texas or Florida, for that matter, just to add that to the list, I just want to be clear. There is the difference between our side and the Democratic side is that in every state, every one of those, it's a simple vote issue. Can you pass it and can you get it done? I don't see a single one of those, not one, that is Texas obviously is trying. Not one of them is actually enthusiastically trying to accomplish it. Okay. But the significant logistical difference is ours is just a matter of putting it up for a vote and doing it. On the Democratic side, they can't.
Why do you say Texas isn't enthusiastic?
I'm still not convinced that they. I don't know. I just, in my gut, I'm like, are you guys doing this because they've asked you to do it and you're going through the motions, or are you really trying? I can't get that. I talked to people down there, and there's a bunch of people are saying we had to kind of do it because the president told us to. Yeah. But I don't get the sense that they want to do it.
Yeah, but they're good at student body right.
Right.
I know,
especially with the Paxton Cornyn race.
Yeah.
Right. Dude, by the way, I love watching the two of them. Like John Cornyn suddenly, like, I'm calling for the FBI to go after him. And Paxton's like, well, I called for the SEC to say.
Exactly.
I mean, they're now they're calling for the international court in Geneva to come out.
I want Texas Rangers on horses, like in Butch Cassidy and Sunday's Kid, going from Austin to Chicago.
By the way, President this morning, one of his truths dealt with the census, which to me,
let's put that up. The president went on a mini jag this morning on Truth, and one of the things was about the census related to this whole redistricting thing. So put this up, and
now,
Sean, put this up. Sean will explain it. 111.
Yeah,
this has never been done before.
Sean, explain this as the nuclear option. Why this is so significant?
Okay, so right now, and this is the dirty little secret that, frankly, and I don't mean this in a pejorative way, but I don't think a lot of Americans fully appreciate this. The census counts bodies, not citizens. And so each president tweaks the census in terms of the questions that are asked and the method by which the census, which is a bureau, which is a agency of the Department of Commerce, goes out and counts people. How it counts people, the questions that are asked, all of those are in the purview of the Commerce Department. And the president caught some flack the first time for trying to get the secretary to tweak some of that. This time, you can see here him calling not to count people not legally in the country. This, to me, is the perfect embodiment of border security, immigration, federal funding. Like, to me, I think this is a huge political winner. No matter where you are in this country, I think that you could probably still win over a ton of independents and a lot of Democrats by saying, don't you think it's fair for the purposes of apportionment and everything else that our census only count people in this country legally? It benefits Democrats. There are studies that show, and admittedly by right-leaning groups, so I'll be, that show that Republicans have cost themselves up to 25 seats through illegal immigration counting people not in this country legally. So this is a huge issue on the right. It's I think, a very populist issue, and I applaud the president for going after this. And how this Commerce Department and Howard Lutnick follow up on this is going to be critical. Is it one truth on a Thursday morning, or does the Commerce Department announce follow-on action? I hope Howard Lutnick and his team over there say, we saw the president's truth, and here's what we're doing, because this, to me, is a huge, huge political winner.
Dan, if they pursue this, is there anything your party can do to try to head it off? Like, you think a court challenge could succeed?
Oh, I don't know if a court. I don't know enough about the law on this, but one, this would be unprecedented to redo the census in the middle of an election, in the middle of the decade. One, you'd be setting a precedent. So if some other president comes in, let's just redo the census and tweak it to try to get an advantage. I actually question whether this is a huge Democratic advantage, because this is the reason that they count illegal immigrants is it impacts your allotment of Medicare and Medicaid and the services that your state provides to these people. Where are there a lot of illegal immigrants? Florida, Texas, Georgia. There are not, yes, there are some in California and New York, but you are going to hit red states hard, really hard. So, I mean, you just crushed them on Medicaid, right? So your answer was delay it for a few years. Now you're going to cut off their federal funds. I'd be curious what Ron DeSantis says about that.
Yeah.
Look, here to your point, Mark, if you're a Democrat and you come out and say, I want to file a lawsuit so that our census starts counting illegals, God bless you. I'll pay for that.
Look, I hear you. No one's going to want to do it, but I think there'll be a mutually assured, like it'll be some third party group that no one's ever heard of.
Right. One quick announcement, and then our last topic, and then your questions. We get complaints all the time from very smart members of the community that the three of us are often ignorant about topics that come up. Fair. We don't know everything about everything. And frequently people say, well, none of you are lawyers and you're talking about all this legal stuff. So we thought about replacing all three hosts with lawyers and rejected that. But the announcement is in the fall, Sean will be at night attending George Mason University Law School. Dan will be going to Cardozo. And so by 3 years from now, we'll have two lawyers on the program. So relax. Lastly,
you think we're agitated and sleep deprived now? Just wait till that happens.
Exactly. You're going to love.
Wait, why did you not get in? I thought you were applying to an online program.
You're going to love contracts and torts, gentlemen. All right. Lastly, New York Times headline 112 yesterday. They treated this like a big news break. I can tell you, anyone who's covering this race has known about this for a while, although they did have some good details. Donald Trump is getting pressure from, I believe, from people like Jared. Notice I said people like Witkoff, who have a lot of real estate in New York City and think a socialist mayor would not be, as we say in the Trump family, good for business. So he has, from the beginning, since Mamdani won the primary, he has been thinking, can he affect the outcome in a way that'd be favorable? Now, that runs counter to the reality that the Republican Party and Donald Trump would benefit greatly if they can make the face of the Democratic Party, not the Democratic nominee for mayor, but the actual mayor. But I believe, based on my reporting, that on balance, the president would like to stop Mamdani. He faces the same challenge everyone who would like to stop Mamdani does, which is the more the establishment and the more Donald Trump are for another candidate, the more the Democratic wing of the Democratic Party rallies in favor of Mamdani. So, first question, Dan, if Donald Trump wants to help Mamdani lose, if he wants to hurt his chance of winning, what's the smartest thing he can do?
Smartest thing he could do would be to find a job for Curtis Sliwa without his fingerprints on it, to get Sliwa out, because right now he's getting up to around 15, 20%. So if you assume none of those voters are going to go to Mamdani, the question then is there an opportunity for a Cuomo or an Adams to then force the other out? Because the ball game right now is who blinks, Cuomo or Adams. You know, Mamdani can't get above 40%, and the other three are completely split. So 40% may win. But if Trump starts truthing and like outright going on Fox, then you're going to knee jerk some Democrats that are going to probably end up going to Mamdani. So you got to find a way to get Curtis Sliwa out of the race.
Sean, do you agree with my reporting that on balance, the president would like someone else to win?
Oh my God, of course he'd like someone else to win. Yes, there's no question. But I think the then what is the key question, because Dan's right. Look, there's one person in the world that could not endorse a Republican and face very little backlash, and it's Donald Trump. That being said, the Sliwa, meaning that if he chose to endorse somebody else, this is the only person I could ever see that wouldn't face any kind of huge political backlash. But I think that among like a lot of these people, Dan's right. How do you find a way that Sliwa he just announced yesterday a big financial haul. He's been playing up his statistics, his polling numbers. So that's the X factor. How do you tell the Republican in the field, you should be the one to bail out, right? Yeah. And then among the two, I don't know. This is the conundrum, because I think the other problem is Trump's seen this politically. Alabama comes to mind in particular, where you bet on the wrong horse and you end up with a consequence that you don't
Yeah.
want to deal with. So how do you bet on somebody and not,
I will tell you, although very smart and very rich people in New York still haven't gotten this through their thick skulls, and I say this in the face of knowing there are a lot of Cuomo haters in the world, there is not one piece of data that suggests that anyone will become mayor besides Mondami, besides Cuomo, which is to say Adams cannot win. His fave unfave are horrible. He was yesterday, because his team is sloppy, he was denied matching funds. He cannot win. So the big moment that's coming is not necessarily about Donald Trump, although he's part of the equation. The big moment that's coming is in September, when these super PACs that are raising lots of money to go after Mamdani, when we see how good their ads are, and when we see if Cuomo in a debate or however he needs to do it can convince people that if you don't want to vote, if you don't want a socialist mayor, he's the only choice. And then, as Sean and Dana both suggested, he's got to make that a binary choice. If the other one or two, if Adams and Sliwa are still getting a decent amount of votes, it's over. And it may be over. But the only person who could win besides Mondami, and again, all the data says this, all the data is Cuomo.
I also want to just flag about after September. I keep saying this. Watch the Black community. Yeah. They still have not endorsed Eric Adams and a lot. Yeah. I mean, Mondani, and they're not endorsing Eric Adams. And that tells me that if you could get the Black community to say to Adams,
100%,
we're pulling the plug, and you get Trump leaning on Sliwa, you have the confluence potentially, as much as people will hold their nose, of going to Andrew Cuomo.
Yeah, Sean. And
then real quick, can I just ask you two real quick? Let's just for the sake of argument say Mark's analysis is 100% right. Just for the sake of argument,
course it is. Yeah.
But Cuomo's the only one that can win. If presented with that option, one, I just have a hard time getting over the hump of Trump saying, "Okay, I've seen all the data. The only one who can win is Cuomo. I will endorse."
No.
He doesn't want his
endorsement.
Okay, that answered question two.
In fact, if he says, "I don't want Andrew Cuomo," be the greatest thing for Andrew Cuomo.
Yeah. Right. The Times reported that Cuomo and Trump talked, seemed to deny it, but again, it's not worth the paper it wasn't written on. But again, Cuomo met with the main business group yesterday. The New York Times write-up suggested they're still skeptical. They still don't want to bet on Cuomo. But again, the Times reported the president was given polling data, and you cannot look at polling data and reach any other conclusion. I'm not saying Cuomo has a good chance to beat him, but I'm saying if you don't want Mondami, there's one option, and there's no reason to think otherwise. Jason, welcome in. Tell folks who don't know where you are, what's on your mind, and start by telling us how you found Two-Way.
Good morning, guys. So I found you, Mark, through your interview with Tucker Carlson. So I started following you since then. I live on the beautiful Eastern Shore of Maryland. And I don't have a question about what you've covered this morning, but if it's okay, I'd like to continue.
Anything you want.
All right, cool. I wanted to continue the conversation about the changing media landscape. So just for context, I grew up without cable news or really any media in the house. I started watching my late 20s, early 30s during the 2016 election. So from my perspective, just like imagine I crawled out from under a rock, it looks like the left kind of influences the media sort of subversively, kind of like from the inside. And then the right seems to kind of push overtly from the outside, like using lawsuits and pressure to like kind of block bad coverage, et cetera. So both sides are trying to like shape the narrative, obviously, right? So my question is, it's kind of like a history of journalism question. Was there ever a golden age of media and news when there was like less manipulation and involvement from either side and from any politicians? And if that's true, like what made it different from today? Like give me kind of like the standard, like what was the gold standard?
Jason, that day is today with the advent of the new platform Two-Way. Dan.
Yeah, look, the media has always been biased. You go back 150 years ago, the old expression, never pick a fight with someone who uses ink in the barrel or by the barrel, right? Because back in the day, the old barons were conservative who owned these outlets because they were rich. And you didn't pick a fight with them. I think the mainstream media is liberal because a lot of them are liberal. The journalists are liberal, the newsroom's liberal, the ownership groups are liberal. And so when you just sit around and talk to yourself all day, you write and think in that way. And the other side is just that, it's the other. I think what's lost in the conversation a lot, including on this platform sometimes, is the most powerful media now is conservative media, right? Fox News is the most watched network. It is more popular often than the old linear networks in terms of ratings. They are conservative. The podcast world, the most listened to, a lot of them are conservative leaning. Now, some of them kind of went that way in 24, but they're not political podcasts, but they dabble in politics and they're kind of starting to swing back a little bit. But look, at the end of the day, they're businesses. And you have to appeal to an audience, and that in more and more being down the middle, it's hard to do. Except Two-Way is trying and hopefully is successful.
Sean.
So actually, if you go way back, you'll see politicians writing under pseudonyms and all sorts of stuff. And I mean, so this has been part of the fabric of our country since its inception. I mean, literally, if you go back and look at our founding fathers and the ways that they were involved with publications, and
the Europeans too, back in the day,
But I think your analysis, Jason, is spot on. I actually really like the way that you presented this. That like they are within the institution pushing out. Republicans, look, there are people who look back on the days when there were 3 networks, and you had to stand up and actually turn a dial and say, okay, those were the good days. I disagree. I think that on the right, we just had to accept it. There was nothing else. When I started in campaigns in the 90s, I mean, that's the devil that you had to dance with. So the idea of looking back on some of these days and saying, oh, well, it was much better then. Again, it was to a point where they entirely controlled what you see, read, and heard. So we just didn't know the difference then. We didn't have a platform to push back on. There was no alternative. You either got your story out or didn't, or it got ignored, but that doesn't make it any better. So I love where we are now. It's much more a battle of ideals and competition. I think I relayed this months ago, but I spoke to a journalism class down in Florida several months back, and I got asked a question, well, are you concerned that journalism is dying? And I said, quite the contrary, it's flourishing. Look at Substack, and there are many platforms. It's just people are a lot more blatant now. I mean, I do a show every night. I'm very right wing. I'm proud of it, but there are plenty of left wing shows, and people then are also trying to. You look at what Bari Weiss is doing at the Free Press and others. I mean, there's everything. So if you want straight down the middle news, you can find that. If you want right wing news outlets or propaganda or whatever it is, or punditry, you can get that. If you want left wing punditry or propaganda, so I think the beautiful thing now is that there are platforms that give voice to things that are all, run the spectrum.
Jason, thank you for the question. I'll just say you've opened the door to allow me to promote the upcoming episode of Next Up, which I'm recording in just a bit. And my reported monologue will be about 2 extraordinary disclosures by Terry Moran, who just left ABC News, and Glenn Kessler, who just left the Washington Post, the famous dispenser of Pinocchios. They both talked about the bias at their respective news organizations with extraordinary openness. And amongst my guests will be Glenn Kessler. And we will talk about what he wrote about the Washington Post being addicted to its liberal audience. So join me for that later today on YouTube and where you get your podcasts. And Jason, grateful to you for being part of Two-Way. Thank you. I'm going to do a whole episode of this show on Tucker coming up, but not today. All right, let's bring in 2 guys. I don't know if they're brothers or not. Let's just see here. Matthew and Matthew. Are you guys brothers, or that would only be in China? I don't know. It'd only be in China. All right. Matthew Heath, you first. Tell folks where you are, what's on your mind for Dan and Sean. Then Matthew Van Alstein and Stein, and then they'll take the questions. Matthew Heath first.
Okay. Yeah, I'm calling from Kansas City, Missouri. And
spent a lot of time there.
Yeah. I've noticed you brought it up a few times. And H&R Block, wasn't it?
Yep. Ran their government relations. Yep.
Okay, yeah, because I didn't know what you did, but I know a lot of people that work for H&R Block around here. I'm pretty sure you didn't do what they do. But
I had 2 taxes.
You should see when Dan goes into gas stations in Manhattan and tries to buy barbecue. You should see the funny looks he gets.
Oh, I've been to that. I've been to that barbecue place in Kansas City, the famous one that's in the gas station. Yep.
It's more than
Oh yeah. The famous one that they had to drop the Oklahoma from the name because they
Oklahoma
wanted to be a
Joe's.
Kansas City.
yeah.
Yeah, they're like, "What? Joe's Kansas City." Like, well, you changed it, but look, people love it though. But no, like, I don't know if you guys take creative suggestions at all.
We
But
do. We take them and reject them, but we do take them.
well, yeah. By all means, like, consider like if a subtitle for the show,
Yeah.
Halperin Unleashed or Halperin Unbridled or something like that. I remember watching you back in like 2008, and you was the most, I should say, level-headed, just comical. Like my dad loved you. He always would pick the even keel guy and go for that. All right. Anyway, but like that, over the years, and it's like seeing you now, it's like, oh my goodness, this is awesome. You're funny. You're killing it. You're crushing it. So
Thank you, Matthew. Unleashed is my subtitle, not just for the program, but for everything I do. So it'll be a little redundant.
Hitting it down on the head.
Yes, sir.
But
thank you for that.
Like, no problem. But like I said, coming from Kansas City, and my question is semi-pertaining to that because you were talking about the redistricting, which is not the most exciting of all the topics, but still, I'm interested because here I live in, I believe it's the 5th district.
Emmanuel Cleaver.
Yes, Mayor Emmanuel Cleaver is the representative of this district. And by the way, he's got a street named after him. And
he's got a lot of things named after him.
Well, that's true. And imagine it is right there in the plaza. He drives through this a guy still alive. He's driving, and you look at the street, and that's your name. Is I don't know, whatever. But but so the redistricting thing, like I remember, or I think you guys seem as like, or at least Sean was like, they don't seem like it's a big deal here in Missouri. Like they're not trying to really mess with it. But I'm not seeing, too many articles about that. But I am seeing a ton of articles about the local Democrats, particularly Emmanuel Cleaver out there screaming like a madman in the streets. Now,
Matthew, we got to get to the other Matthew. So tell us your redistricting question.
Well, do you think it's just noise that the Democrats locally are making here, or do you think that they're upset about something? Or are they just like freaking out because they got it?
Great question. Other Matthew, Steen or Stein?
Stein.
All right, welcome in. Tell us, folks, where you are. What's on your mind?
I'm sitting in New York right now, but I live in Colorado, so I voted in Colorado this last go around.
You in Gotham City currently?
Yeah, I'm on Midtown East right now.
Yeah, it looks like your background out the window.
You on holiday or working?
I work.
Okay. Well, welcome to Gotham City. If you need any advice on socialism, we're here to help.
I moved out during COVID, and I still commute every now and then. But my question is more of like brainwaves, and it's probably for Dan and you, Mark. And I really appreciate your program, like everyone else says. But going back to 2016, 2015, the election, I was a Republican going into it, and I was terrified that Donald Trump was the most transparently manipulable person that's ever run for office, that people would just, someone like Chuck Schumer, who knew him his entire life, would turn him into a closet Democrat, and he would become, the thing that Republicans who are conservatives don't want. And I sit and I watch, the Democrats now, and then you look at like someone like Carney in Canada and compare him to the UK, and it's like the people that know how to manipulate him and praise him and work together with him and get credit with him get a lot out of him. And I just wonder why some Democrats don't just play the game to serve their constituents better. You would think they get a lot more with sugar than vinegar.
Yeah, two great questions. Washington Post Paul Kane, often called the 101st Senator, has a column today about pointing out the fact that Schumer and Jeffries have not had a meeting with the president and that they don't really even talk. And that's, I think, part of the equation. Dan, why don't you address Matthew Heath's question first, and then Sean, why don't you take a crack at other Matthew?
Yeah, I think Matthew Heath, the Emmanuel Cleaver and Democrats in the Kansas City or Missouri state are right to be worried. I think they've talked about this now, the last two redistricting efforts to try to take the Kansas City based district and bring in some of the exurban, not just suburban, but the exurban areas and take him out. I will just say currently there are 8 members of the Missouri delegation. 7 are Republican, 2 are Democrats. The others, the St. Louis used to be the Clay family had it for years. If you take out Emmanuel, it'd be 7-1. I love Emmanuel Cleaver. I think he's just a wonderful human being. He's also, I think, now 82. Look, again, gerrymandering's been going on forever. And if that's what they do, that's what they'll do. But I would be worried if I were Emmanuel.
Sean, I know Matthew suggested a question for me and Dan, but it seems to me a good question for you about what with Democrats, if they tried to make Donald Trump captive, whether that would be possible.
I don't think captive is the right word, but I get Matthew's point, and I think he tried during the first term. If you think about it, right out of the gate after Trump was elected in 2016, Schumer did meet with him a couple times. In fact, urged him to keep the U.S. attorney in the Southern District of New York, and Trump initially did. I think Chuck Schumer, and again, this is a really interesting political question that you're asking, but I think that the ship sailed right then, but they didn't fully appreciate the value of the relationship. And I think that they just tried to take, right? So it was, oh, give me this, name that person, keep this person in. I think that Trump values relationships. He's shown that over and over again. And I actually think it was a missed opportunity by Democrats not to co-opt him, but to develop a relationship where they could have had some kind of deal-making effort going forward, but it got off the rails so quick. I don't think it's ever coming back.
I remember that tunnel Hudson. Like, why didn't Schumer just say, "Hey, we're going to name it the Trump Tunnel," and then you get,
I don't think that
they may name Penn Station now after Trump. Hochul's kind of almost made this unofficial deal in exchange for federal funding, and Trump gave it to her.
Yeah,
and I don't get why Mark Carney doesn't do that in Canada. Like, he's pretending he's a tough guy.
He's got a domestic audience. He
well, that's the thing. And that's the point, is that both Schumer has a political audience that he has to, but I do think it could, if you really wanted a great PhD exercise in political science, go back and study the first several weeks and how things could have been differently. And some of the, I actually think that's a fascinating question, but I think that Democrats didn't appreciate Trump. They thought it was much more transactional, and they didn't fully appreciate the value of relationships. So I think it would have. The ship has clearly sailed now, but I think that agree. And you look at diplomatically. There's a great story out today about Mexican President Sheinbaum and how she has handled Trump from Meredith McGraw out. That I think, again, there are people who get it and don't. And it was so funny yesterday on my interview with Keith Kellogg. Trump's put it all out there in his books. He talks about how he negotiates, how he deals with people. And yet over and over again, people are confounded by him. And I'm like, he is the most transparent person when it comes to how he builds relationships. He's written about it. He's talked about it. And people are constantly trying to rethink it as if it's that complicated. So I find it fascinating. I think diplomatically, we're seeing it play out right now with all of the heads of states and how they approach him and how they handle him. And you can see even Tim Cook yesterday in the White House coming to him, presenting him with that glass that was made in the U.S. The base was made, and he played. I will give Tim Cook credit. Like, he talked about where the glass was made, and it was made by, I think it was a former Marine. So it was like he knew all the right talking points. Credit to Apple's government relations team yesterday for how they did it. But this gets to the heart of your question. So it was very well done, but it's all there. And Matthew Heath, I think the Democrats are right to be scared. I just don't see. I mean, like, they're playing, yelling fire as much as they have to. But I will just say that I have yet to see the political will in any one of these states on the Republican apparatus that is going to push to get it done.
Well, my main theory on that was just that because they are yelling really loud about it, but it doesn't look like it's like it could be them drumming up stuff, politically.
Sure,
whatever.
But that's what they should do.
Them genuinely worried about something. Yeah. So that was anything come from the other side.
Thank you both, Matthews. Yeah. I now see your first names are spelled differently, so it's clear you're not brothers, but still grateful to you for joining together. All right, a few things before we go. First, Sean, what do you have tonight?
Thursday is the panel. So Chris Stegall from our Pennsylvania correspondent, Grace Curley from Massachusetts, the Boston correspondent for the Sean Spicer Show, and then Kay Smythe Hall will join us for the first time as part of our panel.
Great. Group chat. Dan, tell everybody about today.
Nina, Batya, Emma, Joe, not Robbie. Unfortunately, he cannot make it. And myself will be live in studio. It is just awesome to all be together. I think it's a great show when we are, it's an even better show when we are all together. And we'll talk about the latest in politics. So tune in at 4 o'clock Eastern or stream us at your convenience.
4 p.m., 6 o'clock, I'll be on Two-Way Tonight. My guest, Steve Alakari, and others. And then don't forget, Next Up drops later today as well. And then the Moynihan Report at 7 Eastern time, right after Two-Way Tonight. Michael Tracy will join Michael Moynihan then. Finally, the theme song question. Sean still likes Yacht Rock. Dan, where are you?
Number one? Number one's got my heart.
All right, we'll play off.
We call it the barbershop.
We'll play off.
Barbershop.
Have a good day, everybody. But don't click stop, because you'll want to be able to remind yourself about Dan's top choice, pending the hip hop version of the theme song to the old granddaddy of them all, the morning meeting. I'll see you at 6. Have a good night, everybody. A good day.
Welcome to the morning meeting with Mark and Sean and Dan. If you should think of a question, all you gotta do is raise your hand. With a presumption of grace to all. Peace, love, and understanding during the call. Welcome to the morning meeting where the best politics is at. But conversations like no other, but don't put smack in the chat.
I'm ready to go now.
Bye-bye.